I wasn't really going to talk about this, but I've seen enough comments now on my videos and across other videos on the internet to do with this particular section of the MSQ, the first attack on Tuliyollal, that I figured I'd at least offer some of my own thoughts and points on the attack, what I think works, what I think doesn't work. I've seen comments about us / the Scions standing around doing nothing, thumbs up asses, etc, etc. I've seen stuff about how, oh, this should have been a solo duty. I've got some thoughts if you fancy hearing them. If you do, listen on. If not, thanks for tuning in to this intro. There's more MSQ coming up soon. Let's talk about the idea of a solo duty. There's the idea that from the moment we step back into the city, as soon as we see the dome form and we rush back to Tuliyollal, the idea that as soon as we step back into the city to get to the palace, it should have been a solo duty. I can get behind that in some ways. It would have, first of all, good narrative parallels with the events that happen in the Order of Blood, or whatever it's called, in Solution 9 later, where there is a solo duty and we fight our way through the city there, and it ends in the Otis death and the fight versus the big purple dog that's name I can't remember off the top of my head. The danger with that would be, oh, well, it would turn the Solution 9 bit into, oh, it's just a repeat of stuff we've seen. We've already done this. They're just rehashing stuff. And I think emotionally, actually, the stuff with Otis has a little bit more need to play out as it does than the stuff in Tuliyollal, the attack. The attack on Tuliyollal is very cinematic and it's quite quick. It's there. It's a surprise. That's the whole point of the attack. But if it had been a solo duty, then the people who feel like, oh, we should be doing something, would have had their something to do. Admittedly, I think at the expense of a little bit of the pace of the story. There were probably two things involved here. One, there was the question of narrative pace, and there was probably a question of budget as well, because we all know that Square Enix doesn't really put a huge amount of money into Final Fantasy XIV and siphons it off for other projects that almost invariably fail for one reason or another, because they're just not very good at this. FF14 has been propping up the company for a good chunk of time. But I think more importantly, the whole point of the attack is that it is sudden, it is overwhelming, but the people in the city are being defended. It's not like we don't do anything if we is the Scions. It's not like we don't do anything if we is the Warrior of Light, which I'll talk about in a bit. But the Scions are doing something. You know, as well as the Landsguard, as well as Zoraal Ja. Us, the Warrior of Light specifically, joining in here and now would not have turned the tide of the battle. No matter how powerful you've built up the Warrior of Light to be in your own headcanon. Yes, we've killed gods, we've killed despair itself. But, as Alisaie is often quick to remind us, we cannot be everywhere at once. We are not immortal, we are not invincible. We cannot take on an entire army of technologically superior forces that we don't understand what they are, where they've come from, what their weaponry does. That's just not how it has ever worked in this game. But I get it. I can see why people think, oh yeah, we should have done something more. It should have been a solo duty. It would have been good to give us something to do. Yeah, I can see it. I can agree with it. Do I think it would have wrecked the pace? Yeah, possibly a little bit. But it could have been done well. You know, it could have been done in the same way that the Order of Blood stuff in Solution 9 was done, and we could have just in that case dealt with the people moaning that, oh, this is just stuff that we've already seen during that section instead. I don't know which would have been more insufferable. There's also, of course, nothing to say that we didn't lop off a few heads on the way. I mean, we do enter the palace with our weapon drawn, after all, so you know, maybe we had to fight some guards outside. It doesn't make a huge amount of difference. So that's the idea of a solo duty, which I can get behind, but also, yeah, pacing wise, I can see why they didn't do it. The sense of powerlessness is better doing it the way that they've done it. You know, the fact that there wasn't anything we can do because we're not being allowed to do anything, it keeps the threat more alien, more unknowable at this point. And I suspect that's probably one of the other reasons why they did it. They didn't want to reveal too much just yet. They wanted us to show how, they wanted to show us rather how people dealt with this sudden occurrence. Another point that I've seen is this idea of taking charge, that events like these, quote unquote, are our, quote unquote, area of expertise, and that we should have taken charge. Let's be real here. The Warrior of Light doesn't take charge. They've never really taken charge. The Warrior of Light is the player insert. We don't have any real agency. The most agency we get is occasionally a dialogue choice, or maybe a branching MSQ, where we go one way and then we come back and do the other. We don't have any agency. We do what the Scions and other characters tell us to do. The Warrior of Light is, and always has been, a weapon, a literal blade of light. It's right there in the introduction to 2.0. We are the weapon, we are wielded by others, or in moments of really obvious opposition where there's no other choice, we're thrust into fights because we're there, or the antagonist demands it of us. You know, Xenos demands us to fight him. That's why we fight in that situation. But otherwise, we don't take charge. The Scions take charge. We don't. Saying that we are experts at dealing with situations like these is also kind of wrong. You know, the Warrior of Light is an expert at dealing with one-on-one singular foes. You know, we started off in 2.0, 2.x and 3.x as being, we can deal with primals. We are specifically suited for dealing with primals because we've got the Blessing of Hydaelyn, we've got the Echo, we can't be tempered. We defeat the big things that other people can't fight because they'd be tempered. That is what we were good at. And then we dealt with archbishops, and we dealt with Ascians, and we dealt with essentially gods. We are an expert, such as it is, although if you've seen my DPS gameplay, maybe expert's not the right word, but we are good at dealing with singular foes. And no, don't give me any BS about, oh, well, we can deal with trash packs in dungeons. Yeah, whatever. Story-wise, we are not an expert at dealing with invasion forces. Do we have experience with it? Yeah, sure. But do we come up with the plans? No, we turn to the Scions for the actual plans, the characters that are voiced, the characters that are given dialogue. And what do? They organise things, they use their individual areas of expertise in attack, in defence, in diplomacy, in democracy, in planning, and what do they do with us? They point us at the strongest foe. What did we do in this section of the story? We went to where the strongest foe was likely to be. We went with Wuklemat, who pointed us to where the strongest foe was likely to be. So, maybe when people are saying we should be taking charge, do they actually mean that the Scions should be taking charge? Well, they kind of did during the attack. You know, they fell into their areas of expertise. Alisaie went on the defence using her spells. Kryl was organising people getting away and escaping and moving the people around. Alphino was there healing the wounded. The stronger types like the Landsguard and Bakul Jar Jar were there doing, you know, taking the fight essentially to the invaders. And we collect them. We collect them as we go and head to the palace. Of course, you know, with Erenville tagging along, because Erenville is not an idiot and he knows it's safer with us than being out there in the city. So, could that have been done as part of a solo duty? You know, we we get to Alizé and we take her with us, and we get to Kryl and help people go to safety, and then Kryl comes with us, and so on and so forth. Yes, we could have done that. That is one way it could have been done. Would it have kept the pace up? Not really. Would it have kept the strength of these foes as a bit of a mystery in relation to us? No. No, it wouldn't. But I can see why people wanted that. But in terms of taking charge, the Scions are at the best in taking charge when they have the opportunity to think. And there is no time to think in a surprise attack invasion from a technologically superior and numerically superior force. We get to the palace. Now, there's dramatic irony at play in this section, and for those of you that don't know what dramatic irony is, it is a literary technique where we, the audience, the reader, the player in this particular case, know things that the characters in the medium that we are playing through or watching or reading, what they don't. Now, we, the audience, and I've got thoughts about this, and I've expressed my thoughts about this multiple times during the videos, but I think it's probably in the sections that are coming up. The reveals of Heritage Found and Solution 9 to us in the live letters, I still think is and was a mistake. I think they would have been much cooler surprises if we got to the dome and we got to this attack and we'd seen absolutely nothing of the tech side of this expansion. In fact, I'd argue that that's probably my second biggest critique of the entire thing. The fact that the tech side has been spoiled for us. I wish they hadn't told us. I wish they'd just done what Yoshi P normally does and says, oh, we can't talk about this bit because it's story spoilers. And I wish they'd just left it at that. And then we could have been in the exact same place that the Scions are in terms of the surprise of everything that is going on here. Would we perhaps have been as hyped? Yeah, that's very much debatable. But yeah, I don't think they should have spoiled it. Anyway, dramatic irony. We know all of the stuff about the tech side of things. The characters, in this moment, they know nothing. Jon Snow. They've had very little experience with any of this kind of stuff. Have the Warrior of Light and the Scions experienced technologically advanced things before? Yeah, we know about the Allagans. But we didn't have to fight the Allagans. And I mention this, I think, later when we get to the stuff about Heritage Found. I talk about how we've had all this stuff about what the Allagans were like, but we've never really had to fight them properly. Yeah, we've encountered some Allagan stuff during dungeons, but an Allagan invasion force? We haven't had to deal with anything like that I can remember off the top of my head. So the characters are dealing with the surprise of, oh my god, what is going on? What is all this glowy stuff? What is this technology? We know nothing about this. We can't plan if we don't understand what it can do. And then when they get to the palace to deal with, to try and cut off the head of the invasion, because it's clear that's where it's going to end up, that's what invasions do. They go for the leaders. Zoraal Ja, Kona, they're going to be at the palace. And more importantly, Wuklamut takes us there, so it's fairly obvious. And what happens when we get there? We find Zoraal Ja, who's, again, surprise, surprise, there for a start, because he's been missing for a day or two. He didn't turn up for the ceremony. But more importantly, he's covered in this unfamiliar technology. Now, the Scions have got some experience at dealing with unfamiliar technology. We've dealt with remnants of the Allagans. What did we do? Well, they didn't rush in and get themselves killed. What they did was they stop. They think. They find out what it's about. They find out what it can do. And that's literally what the next arc of the story is all about. Finding out what are we up against and understanding it. Not just with Zoraal Ja, but with Sphene as well. The person who doesn't have the experience with this, the person that does go to rush in, is of course Wooklamot. But Ketenram holds her back. He stops her for probably several reasons. For protection, because of, you know, it's his best friend's daughter, but also he stops her because he was here for the massacre. As we are running into that room, we see the guards dead, littering the floor. You know, Ketenram has seen how quickly Zoraal Ja can kill people, and he knows that for all of her newfound confidence and strength and purpose and resolve, he knows that Wooklamot can't beat Zoraal Ja at this point. He knows that she will die. There's also, of course, the possibility that it's that very honour-related trope so prevalent in JRPGs. You know, it's her father's fights. And to be fair, Zoraal Ja actually does openly state that fairly shortly. So we've got that lull, which gives us dramatic opportunity to find out a little bit more of what is going on, to take a breath, to take stock of the situation, to start formulating some ideas. And during that time, Zoraal Ja makes it very, very clear, very, very quickly, what the consequences of opposing him are. He will kill everyone here. And he's not just talking in the throne room. He's talking everybody in the city. He's talking basically everybody on the continent. And to be fair, that's the plan anyway, once we find out what Sphyn's actually about. He will kill everybody who refuses him. And as we've mentioned, yes, the Warrior of Light might be able to stand up to Zoraal Ja, even though we don't know about his resurrection technology right now. But we cannot be everywhere at once. If we provoke him here in this moment, if we antagonize him, we know he has the power and technology to kill everyone. And we can't stop him because we haven't had the time to figure out what he can do. All we have seen is a massively superior force invading, wiping people out, whittling down our numbers really, really easily. Added to that, of course, we've fought, as the player, we have fought Zoraal Ja. We know how strong he is. We also have heard several times that Zoraal Ja has never been able to defeat his father. So we've got an issue. You know, if we attack, Zoraal Ja gives the order to wipe out the city. There's nothing we can do about it. We are one person in one place. If he sends down more people from those ships, the city is gone. If the city is gone, the continent falls. We don't want that. When Wooklamot says, no, she needs to step in, she's the leader now, she will deal with her brother, Zoraal Ja says, no, this is my responsibility, he is my son, I have failed him, it's my responsibility as a father. And yes, that ties in with the whole honour thing, but also, we know how strong Zoraal Ja is. Kona reminds her that Zoraal Ja has never beaten their father. And I wasn't really expecting this, and if you've watched the video, you'll know that I wasn't really expecting this. Zoraal Ja does indeed beat Zoraal Ja, and he kills him. In a fair fight, Zoraal Ja gets his ass kicked. Obviously that doesn't set well with him, but that's the next step of this stuff, isn't it? So Zoraal Ja's resurrection is another piece of the puzzle that takes all of the protagonists by surprise. Maybe we as players shouldn't be surprised by a re-raise mechanic. You know, it's a mechanic that we've seen in a lot of Final Fantasy games, including this one. But it's never really had an in-universe, you know, an actual in-game universe explanation or version. You know, it's a thing because it's in the Final Fantasy game. It's a mechanic as opposed to it's a story element. This is, I think, the first time that it's actually been part of the story itself, save for what the Ascients can do, but that's not re-raise really, is it? So when we see the re-raise, everybody is flabbergasted, as realistically they would be. Somebody has just brought themselves back from the dead with unknown technology. And this, of course, brings to mind the question of, well, how many times can he do this? Can he do this indefinitely? What are the limits of this? We don't know, and that ties into everything that I've been saying already about. We need more information. We don't have the time in this moment to get that information. We just have to not provoke the guy who can wipe out everybody. And of course, it turns out that that was a good idea, because we do find out later that he could do it many, many more times, as many as he's got stored souls. You know, even the Warrior of Light, if we had leapt in, if Zoraal Ja hadn't given the order and we'd leapt in to duel him, we'd be quite hard pressed right now, because we can't rest, you know. And if it was to break out into a fight with the Scions and the Warrior of Light versus Zoraal Ja with his infinite souls, what would he do? You know, he's a military genius. He would take out all of the Scions first, and then he'd whittle us down. We are not immortal. You know? Am I giving reasons to things that should have been shown in the story? Potentially. But I don't think this is a particularly difficult leap to make for even the most media illiterate individual when it comes to experiencing this story. You know, a tactical opponent in a battle like this would remove the weakest links. They're going to remove Alphino first because he's the healer. They're going to remove Kryl because she's small. They're getting, no offense, Kryl. I know Pictomancers are a little bit OP and probably need a nerf, but they're going to remove Alzay. Yeah, he already Zoraal Ja already knows that he can defeat Wooklamats. So, of course, at this stage in the MSQ, I literally ask on the video, can we step in now, please? You know, even then, it's like, we should be doing something. But what can we do? And we don't seem to be able to kill him. It seems like he's going to keep on coming back. And that's even before the red rage, the soul overdrive thing kicks in. It's like we have to just stand by and hope that Zoraal Ja's kind of self-absorbed obsession with proving himself better than his father, of finding out what his purpose is for existing, keeps him focused on that fight with his dad, because what else can we actually do? While he's fighting that duel to prove himself, he is not giving the order to kill the entire populace. So could we have stepped in as the Warrior of Light? Sure. Could we have saved Zoraal Ja? Probably. In doing so, would we have likely triggered an invasion that we couldn't defend against? Yes. Was waiting and hoping that Zoraal Ja's desire to prove himself and that it overrules his need for conquest by forcing Wookalamat to confront him a good plan? God no, it's a fucking awful plan. But in the moments, there's not a lot else that can be done that doesn't result in the loss of thousands of lives. There was no way during this battle of us taking charge and changing the outcome. Whatever we did there would have resulted in the loss of more lives than were actually lost. And we did find out later that a chunk of the attack was superficial. It was a show of force. You know, did people die? Yeah, I'm sure they say something like 50 people died and many more were injured. But it was a show of force. If we had taken charge, if we had intervened, those 50 casualties would have been a lot higher. So, that's the situation as I saw it in the moment. Obviously, you know, in the moment I didn't express it in the way that I have done here. But that is my reading of the story. Now, you can say it's copium. You can say it's me trying to make excuses for bad writing, because I'm sure somebody's gonna, as much as you want. But as somebody who studies literature and teaches literature and has written literature, you know, I'm not going to say I'm right here, because I don't have that much of an ego. This is just my take on the situation. You know, the solo duty stuff that people are talking about, yeah, I can get behind that. I think it would have messed up the pace of the story, but I can see why people would have wanted something to do here. But I can also see, from a narrative perspective, why it wasn't done. And equally, why did we just stand around and watch? Because what other choice did we have? You know, we couldn't have done anything in that moment to make the situation better. We could have saved Zoraal Ja potentially, but at what cost? You know, we didn't know the size and scope and magnitude of Zoraal Ja and his forces and what he can do. So we didn't step in. You know, I wanted to in the moment, but thinking about it, so I actually know. The fact that we weren't given that agency, the fact that we didn't jump in was the right call. Because what happens afterwards? Afterwards, we do exactly what the Scions always do. Are we in charge? No, because we're in a foreign nation and we are working with a foreign power who turns to us, the Scions, for advice and counsel. We bring in experts. We bring in Ashtola. We bring in Graha. You know, people who are experts at dealing with arcane entities and, as it happens, dealing with other reflections as well. You know, the Scions are not a military force. They are researchers. They are students. They are academics. They are knowledgeable. Do they have martial skill? Yes. Can they turn the tide of an invasion? Not if they don't understand what the invasion forces can do. Which is, of course, why, in the second attack, they do repel the invasion forces. They make a pact with Razat Han. They get the population organised. They make sure that they've got the defences that they need to do to deal with the assault. But they can only do that once they know the nature of the threats. So whilst you might think that we were stood around with our thumbs up our asses and we should have done something, that's literally not the way we have ever done anything in Final Fantasy XIV. The Warrior of Light is a weapon who is pointed at the toughest foe, and that is exactly what happens throughout the rest of the story. Once the Scions figure out what is going on, what the limitations are, what they're dealing with, and who to point us at. Initially, Zoraal Ja. Ultimately, Sphene. You can call it bad writing if you want, but it actually makes perfect sense. Now, have I missed some stuff? Yeah, probably. All I did was look back through the invasion cinematic for when I was putting this video together, and you'll have noticed that there's not been any visual for this. This is purely a talking head video, which, you know, second monitor content. Just listen to my thoughts if you even give two shits. But that is my take on, and it's taken me half an hour to explain, but in my opinion, that is why we don't step in. Because us stepping in without being told to is, yeah, it's something that we do on occasion, but more importantly, us doing that wouldn't have changed anything. And that was the whole point of the invasion. It highlights everything about the Scions and the themes of this story, all from the first arc, learning about new people, finding out what they're about, and that's going to take us through into the second stage, because it's a lesson for Kona and Wooklamats to learn, and a lesson, of course, that the Scions have been learning over and over and over again through Realm Reborn, through 2.x, through Heavensward and its patches, through Stormblood, through Shadowbringers, through Endwalker. That is what we do. We are good at what we do because we learn about what it is that we are dealing with. Those are my thoughts. Take them or leave them. Whatever the case, thank you very much for listening. Have yourselves a fabulous day. Let me know what your thoughts are on my thoughts down below. Any that I find interesting, I will try and reply to. Cheerio. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, why not click the like button and consider subscribing. Remember, you can ring the bell notification icon to get notified when new videos go live. And until next time, cheerio.